The Yangtze River breathed slowly, like an old dragon hiding in the reeds. A fog hung over the water, thick as silk from the capital of Ing, and the reflections of night lanterns flickered within it. On the far bank, where black pines propped up the sky, stood the stone ramparts of Luolin, the western stronghold of the Chu kingdom. That night, a young man in a linen cloak stepped onto the shore. A short jade knife in a lacquered sheath hung from his belt. His gaze was as cold as autumn water. His name was Liang. He had come to take back what the world had taken from him. His name, his lineage, and his mother's song. "Mother," he whispered to the fog. "See how steady I hold the knife." The fog closed in like fingers, blessing or warning, who knows. Once upon a time, there was a village called Huaijiang in a valley between hills. In spring, red ribbons were hung on apricot trees, and in autumn, rice was dried on warm roofs. Liang ran barefoot and learned from an old calligrapher lines that resembled the flow of rivers, until drums rumbled over the valley and King Chu Jiangwang appeared, whom the people whispered was the Black Mask Tyrant. He demanded taxes, soldiers, iron, and blood, more than the land could give. The elders begged him to ease the burden, but the chief shaman Baihu, the white tiger, had already risen up at the king's court, whispering things worse than thunder to the ruler. The taxes were not reduced. When the peasants refused to hand over their grain, a punitive 100 arrived. The village was burned down, the men were taken to work on the ramparts, and the women were enslaved in the palace weaving workshops. That night, Liang, thrown back by the explosion, came to his senses in a stranger's yard in the rain. Instead of a house, there was ash. Instead of a father, there was black ash. Instead of a mother, there was a voice that no longer sang. Then he swore, "My life will be a path that leads to the shadow of the king." He was picked up by traveling acrobats. They taught him to walk on a tightrope and steal shadows from lanterns. But the real journey began when a gray-haired man in simple but perfectly ironed clothes came to the acrobats' camp at night. His name was Master Qian of the Brotherhood of the Mist Thread, an invisible guild of assassins that had emerged back when the singer Chu Yuan wrote Li Saw and wept over the injustice at court. "Your heart is sharper than your fist," said the master, watching Liang cut through the air with his stick. "But a knife is sharper than the heart when held correctly." "I want to hold it correctly," replied the young man, and so he entered the shadows. Section 2. The Three Seals of the Misty Thread. In the mountain monastery under the cedars, the masters taught differently than in the army. Here, movement was not separated from thought, nor breathing from walking. "The first seal is silence," said Master Qian. "Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the ability to hear only what is necessary. The second seal is the face. In every mask there is a crack. In every glance there is a mirror. The third seal is impulse. When everything is ready, don't think." Liang practiced on wet rocks and in cramped caves. He learned to drink rain when there was no water and to read the winds when there were no words. He only held the jade knife at the end of the day. The master forbade him to touch the blade while there was even a trace of anger left in his hand. "Anger is smoke," said the master, "and the knife loves clean air." Once, a woman in dark purple came to the monastery, her hair held back with a jade pin. She showed a sign, a knot with 3 white threads, and said, "I am Lan Jiao, Orchid Blade. The city of Luolin is suffocating. The king is preparing a sacrifice to the river, 100 prisoners, so that the proper rains will seal the contract with the spirits. The prisoners have already been brought in. Among them is a child from your former village. If we don't make it in time, the bodies will go into the water to the sound of drums." Liang felt ancient ashes stir in his chest. "I'll go," he said. "You will not go alone," replied Lan Jiao. "A true shadow does not walk alone." She glanced at the master. He nodded slowly. "It is time to recreate the Trinity of Smoke," he said. "Yun Blade, Orchid, and I." Luolin greeted them with walls plastered with rain and clay lions rubbing their muzzles in the damp air. On the towers were drums, black as the bark of old oak trees. Each beat shot out of their chests like thunder. "Black leather drums," whispered Lan Jiao. Baihu loves them. He says the spirits listen better. The spirits listen to those who pay, replied Master Qian. And Baihu always finds a way to pay with other people's hands. They entered the city through the market gate with a caravan of salt. Under the roofs of the shops, there was a smell of hot soybeans, wet wood, and pepper. Liang covered his jade knife with a bandage and hung a bag of amulets around his neck, a potion that concealed his pulse. At the Shining Torch Tavern, they met a palace archivist, thin as a bamboo ruler. Her name was Shui Yun. She quietly announced, "Tomorrow, at the full moon, there will be a ritual of appeasement." Baihu convinced the king that without blood, the river will not accept our bridges. The ritual will take place at the Jade Pier, and today there will be a banquet in the courtyard of the Bees That Sleep. All the right people will gather there, all those who bow twice and lie 3 times. "We have to get into the courtyard," said the master, "and to the pier, and into the tyrant's head," added Yun Liang, and there was no falsehood in his voice. Shui Yun looked at him for a long time. "Do you want to kill the king? I want the punitive hundreds to stop coming to our valleys. Then know this, the king is not alone. He is bound by the seal of the white tiger, a bone talisman in the shape of a paw. As long as the seal is on him, he will listen only to Baihu. Remove the seal, and he may hear himself. The talisman is also human. It loves a stranger's hand," whispered the master. "We will take his voice away from him." The courtyard stood above the garden with lanterns. Under the lanterns were wine bowls. Under the bowls were tongues that recited poems 45 times and flattery 50 times. In the center of the courtyard sat Jiang Wang in black silk. On his left wrist was a bone seal in the shape of a tiger's paw, girded with white thread. Next to him was Baihu, his eyes like 2 timeless ice flows. Lan Jiao entered like a cloud that had forgotten how to thunder. She wore the dark clothes of a servant, her hair gathered so that a pin could become a blade in a single breath. Yun Liang, disguised as a musician, carried a qin, a 7-stringed instrument. Master Qian was a cook who brought a steaming snakefish in soy sauce on a tray. "Music," the king nodded wearily. "Let this rain have meaning." Lan Jiao set a jug of wine next to Baihu. "Lord of spirits," she said quietly. "Today's wine is from the northern vines. The ghosts there love it." Baihu tasted it and squinted for a moment. The wine was infused with a light intoxication that hardened the body but stirred the memory. Yun Liang, meanwhile, placed the qin on its stand, ran his fingers over the strings, and the garden was filled with the song of the crow over the field. Those who knew would have noticed that at some point the melody broke and became a trap for the ear. "Good," said the king. "At least something sounds honest today." "Only rain and death sound honest," whispered Baihu, but something stirred in his eyes. The drumstick on the tower beat 3 rhythms, a signal that no one but Lan and Lian heard. "The right corridor is clear." Master Qian placed the tray closer to the throne. The palace guards looked at the fish, how it glistened with fat. No one saw the thin red thread slip from Master Qian's sleeve and barely touch the white thread on the king's seal. "Wine for the tiger." Lan Jiao leaned toward Baihu again. "And for those who hunt tigers." And at that moment, Yun Liang swayed the melody. The song of the crow turned into the song of darkness, an old tune from the mountain temples. Even stone forgot to be hard when it played. Baihu opened his mouth for a moment, as if to breathe in all the silence at once. His fingers released the edge of the king's sleeve. The red thread jerked. The white thread on the seal unraveled imperceptibly, and the bone paw slid lower down the wrist. "Who are you?" Jiang Wang suddenly asked hoarsely in the silence between 2 notes. "Why is my vision disturbed?" "Because there is still a man in it," replied Yun Liang, his fingers continuing to touch the strings. "You dare," began Baihu. "You are afraid," Lan Jiao interrupted softly, "because today at the pier, you are only capable of killing water." Baihu stood up, but stopped. There was just enough intoxication in the wine to shake his center, and he felt the floor tremble under his feet, although it was his knees that were trembling. "Guards!" he shouted. 3 movements were the answer. Liang's knife flashed. A cut. The rope with bells that warned the guards fell. Lan Jiao's pin. A nail. She jammed the lock on the door. The master's hand. Pressure. The white tiger seal broke away from the king's wrist and slid onto the tray to the fish. "It's time to go," said the master. They disappeared before anger and fear had time to put on their boots. The full moon hung like a silver knife over the water. Captives stood tied up on Jade Pier. 100 souls, among them little Lu, a girl from Huayang, her eyes like 2 drops of ink at school. On the main platform was a stone altar with tiger torches and a bowl of black liquid. The drums beat slower than the heart. Baihu walked like someone who doubts but does not retreat. Behind him was the king in black, a little confused but still commanding. The seal was no longer on his wrist, but he did not notice it. The habit of ruling was stronger than bone. "Spirits," Baihu cried, "accept our gift. The rain will be your horse." He raised the knife. "Wait," the king said suddenly. "Why are their eyes so human?" "Because they are human," came a voice from the darkness. 3 figures stood on the roof of the warehouse above the pier. Lan Jiao was like the shadow of a lantern. The master was like an old tree trunk. Yun Liang was like a ripple in the water. The rain began to fall with a light touch. "King," said the master, "when you were a boy, a servant girl sang in your mother's courtyard. She knew 2 songs, about the rain and about the harvest. You cried during about the rain because you were afraid of thunder. You laughed during about the harvest because you loved the smell of grain. Today they sing the same songs to you, only the voice is different. I ask you not as a king, but as that boy. Which song do you want to hear?" At first, the king did not believe that anyone remembered him from so long ago. He touched his wrist. It was light, bare. His gaze flashed. Some kind of conspiracy dissolved in his eyes. But Baihu took a bone whistle from his belt, blew it, and palace archers rushed along the banks like black fish. "Kill the shadows. The river needs blood." Arrows flew like rain from anger. Lan Jiao waved her hand, and a low whistle sounded. The boys of the Misty Thread, disguised as porters, jumped out of the warehouses. They covered the prisoners with wet cloths and cut the ropes. The master tossed the white tiger seal into the air and caught it. Its reflection fell on the king's face, tracing emptiness. "Give it here," Baihu howled. "Without the seal, the spirits will go blind." "Then let them see," the master replied quietly. A sea of movement began. Yun Liang jumped down into the white waves. With 2 cuts, he deflected the arrows, and with a third, he cut the rope that tied Lu. He picked her up and pressed her to his chest. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "The song will return home." "What about my mother?" the girl whispered. "We are all your mothers now," said Lan Jiao, appearing beside her. Baihu rushed to the altar to cut the throat of another captive so that the river would not remain hungry. And then the king, who was standing nearby, struck someone for the first time in many years. Not a shaman. The blade flashed between them, leaving blood on the king's hand. "Enough," said Jiang Wang, his voice hoarse with words unknown even to himself. "Spirits do not feed on slaves. Spirits feed on fear." Baihu shouted and jumped at the king. Yun Liang was already there. The first duel was lightning fast. 2 blades crossed like 2 birds in a storm. Baihu fenced with a curved knife that loved low arcs. Yun with a short jade knife that loved straight lines. The shaman's blade rustled like grass in the wind. The young man's blade like a raindrop on bamboo. They fought on slippery boards, and every step could be their last. "Give me the seal," howled the shaman. "Give the people rain," replied Liang. The shaman struck from below with a snake-like lunge. Liang pressed the blade with his wrist and rolled over, nearly falling into the water. Lu let out a thin cry. Lan Jiao pulled her back behind the rice sacks, which now served as shields. The archers fired another volley, but the boys of the Misty Thread were already removing the bows from their quivers, dismantling the strings with their bare fingers. The king stood, clutching his slashed wrist, and looked at his people, not as shadows, but as breathing human beings. An ancient shyness stirred in his eyes, the kind that Baker's lessons had beaten out of him. I command. He paused. I ask. He corrected himself. Let them go. The soldiers hesitated. Their loyalty was stitched together with orders and fear. But when the king asked, fear lost its teeth. Some lowered their bows. Traitors, Behu howled. You will all become mold in my vats. Your vats are already open, said the master. He threw the seal into the bowl of black liquid, and the bone paw dissolved, hissing as if alive. Threads of white magic spread like a damp web. Behu's eyes widened. No, without it, the spirits. The spirits are better off without lies, Lan Jiao replied. The shaman roared and lunged a second time. Now his movements were disorderly, and Yun Liang saw not strength in them, but hunger. He took half a step back, let him come closer, and placed the blade at the right moment, right between his ribs, so as to stop the song without spilling blood. You don't understand anything, boy, Behu hissed, gasping for air. People want to be afraid. They need us. They need themselves, Yun Liang replied. The shaman fell, and the darkness became quiet. The rain grew louder, but warmer. As he fell, Behu managed to whistle. For black warriors emerged from the darkness, those he had trained personally. Their palms bore the marks of tiger claws, their eyes the calm of the dead. It seemed as if they moved not on their feet, but on shadows. Chain formation, whispered Lan Jiao. They are invincible on even boards. Then let's make the boards uneven, said the master, kicking the pier post. The old wood groaned. The boards rippled. The first black warrior miscalculated by half a step and received Lan's pin in his ribs. The second swung a broadsword, but Yun Liang dove under the blade and slashed his thigh from the inside. The third and fourth moved faster, and Yun suddenly realized they were twins, fighting like two halves of the same fish. The left one leads with his feet, the right one with his eyes, cried the master. Tear them apart. I'll take the left one, said Lan Jiao. I'll take the right one, replied Liang. They divided the shadow in half and attacked simultaneously. The battle resembled a chess game where the squares had moved apart. Each move required a different breath. Yun held silence in his heart. He heard only his footsteps and the whistle of the blade. For a moment, the twin on the right saw something familiar in his eyes, and that was enough. Liang blocked his shoulder with the scabbard and pressed the blade to his carotid artery. The left one moved like a stone toward Lan. She dodged the blow to her neck, stepped back, just a finger's width, and stuck the pin in the gap between two breaths. The twins fell like two halves of one night. The drums on the towers fell silent. The rain fell steadily. Remove the shackles, said the king. Let the people go home. Let the river take only the rain. The crowd hummed dully. For the first time in many months, there was no fear in that hum. The morning dawned white. The river carried peach petals on its surface, blown in from distant gardens. The pier smelled of water, wet rice, and the sweat of people working together. Lu held Young's hand and didn't want to let go. Her eyes shone like when they lit the stove at home. Will you come back? She asked. When the rivers call, he smiled. We come. The king stood aside, without his seal, without drums, with his wrist bandaged. He approached slowly. Boy, he said, did you want to kill me? Yun Liang looked him in the eyes. There was still a lot of darkness there, but now it had boundaries. I wanted to kill the one who ordered the villages to be burned. If it was you, yes. If it was the shadow on your hand, I tore it off. Now it's your choice. I will be pursued by those who benefit from my drums, said the king quietly. I will need silence to hear myself. Silence is not the absence of sound, repeated Master Yun. It is the ability to hear only what is necessary. We will leave you a bell that rings when the heart of the people beats. Remember, as soon as it starts beating instead of the heart, we will return. The king lowered his head. I will accept this shame, he whispered, and maybe it will make me human. Shui Yun approached them near the warehouses, clutching a scroll to her chest. Here are the names of those who stood behind the ritual, she said. The merchants who paid Behu, the commanders who drank infusions with him. Without them, there will be no one to extinguish our fires with foreign blood. Conspiracies will be cut off at the root, the master approved. But roots like to hide under the grass. Don't burn the fields. We'll expose them, Lan nodded, and the people will decide what to do with them. When there is enough light, rope often becomes unnecessary. Yun Liang looked at the blades. His jade knife seemed to have darkened, not from blood, but from rain. I will bring Lu home, he said. Even if only a stump remains of the house, flowers will grow on it too. You are not done here yet, the master stopped him. The last duel awaits you, Yun Blade. Not with a shaman, not with a king, with yourself. I have already conquered my anger, the young man croaked. Anger likes to come back for a visit when the table is set with victory, said the master. It will sit down and ask for more. Don't entertain it. Yun Liang smiled. I will serve him tea and say, drink and go. Very well, said Lan Jiao. In the meantime, get ready. We are leaving the city tonight. We will take the scroll and silence with us. They walked at night, but now the night did not hiss at their backs. It sang as new roads sing. Behind them, they left not only a broken seal and a wet pier. Behind them, they left human whispers that had finally agreed to be voices. Shui Yun gave the scroll to those who could read aloud where everyone else was silent. The names rang out over the markets like spoon blows on a cauldron, simple but compelling. Some were swept away by the community itself, some by the court of law, some by shame, which, as the master said, heals more slowly but more reliably. King Jiangwang banned blood rituals and destroyed the black leather drums. In their place, wooden bells were hung, light as breath. They rang at work, in the morning, in the fields, in the afternoon, for a break, in the evening, for a song. Yun Liang led Lu to the valley where Huaijiang once stood. New shoots were already growing there. The women rescued at the pier sang as they sowed seeds. And these songs sounded just like when his mother sang over a pot of millet. This will be home, said Lu. There is already a home here, replied Yun. Because you know how to say that word. Then Yun Liang went back into the shadows, together with Lan Jiao and the master. They knew that on the other side of the mountains there would always be another Baihu and another king who confused fear with power. But now they had more than just blades. They had a song they had learned to give back to the people. And every night, when the Yangtze breathed slowly like an old dragon in the reeds, the mist rose from the water like silk from the palms of weavers. And it seemed as if the river itself was whispering, "Thank you for the rain that does not kill." Moral: revenge is swift as lightning, but its light lasts only a moment. True power lies in turning lightning into rain, breaking the seal of fear, giving back a voice to those who have been silenced, and not allowing anger to sit at your table for long. Conspiracies love darkness, but light a few simple lanterns, and ropes become unnecessary. Note on history and fiction. This story is partly fictional, partly based on facts from the late Chu Kingdom, Warring States period. The real elements are the Chu culture with its shamanism, lacquered weapons, dragon snake motifs, drum rituals, and the traditions of the Ci-Ku/assassins, who appeared at courts as bearers of personal courage and political missions. The story contains allusions to the poet Chu Yuan and the Lisha, to palace intrigues and folk practices, as well as to ritual disputes over sacrifices to the rivers. The characters Yun Liang, Lan Jiao, Master Qian, Bai Hu, and Jiang Wang are artistic images created for an epic and mystical journey through the world of Chu, where conspiracies and duels are intertwined with human dignity and choice. The main goal of the story is to give the reader a journey through time and an immersion into the world of ancient China, where rivers remember songs, shadows can sing, and a jade knife is sharp only when the hand is clean.